Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm recording on April 13th at 7:38. All right, so we're going to be covering the attack by Iran with drones on Israel. This is the third installment. Now, there seems to be multiple waves, lots of drones. As of this moment, it sounds like that the Iron Dome knocked out some of the drones. The U.S. knocked some drones. I don't know where, perhaps over Iraq. I don't know. All right. But that was a notification through the Wall Street Journal. And there hasn't been a retaliatory strike yet by Israel. All right. So we're going to continue following Al Jazeera. There's an important feature. There's this guy that comes on that I want to play that explains the payload that's on these drones. Before we do that, please make sure you subscribe to all my channels. I have 3 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Also follow me on X and GETTR. All the links are in the description of this video. In addition, please, if you would like to help support my work, please go on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and you can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee on the homepage of the website at the bottom. I also sell structural nanosilver supplements, a variety of different vitamins, deodorants, toothpaste, and strong antioxidants. One of those strong antioxidants are C60. All right. I sell it in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, and an 8-ounce configuration. I sell in coconut oil, avocado oil, and also, which is new now, on my store, you can also get extra virgin olive oil. So what this does is it has the C60 compound in it, and that C60 soaks up free radicals. That's important to help to reduce stress in the cell, help to reduce stress in the mitochondria, and help to boost ATP. It'll slow down the aging process, and you'll have better cellular function, and you'll have more energy. So please go to the store, get the 2-ounce, the 4-ounce, or the 8-ounce bottle. You can get it in olive oil, coconut oil, or avocado oil. This one is avocado. So take a full dropper of this a day, or take a teaspoon of it a day. I take a teaspoon of it a day, and you will see compound benefits of this very strong antioxidant. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60 that I offer.
Of who's the top U.S. officials who say they are working in close coordination with their Israeli counterparts in directing the way that the U.S. is supporting Israel's defense against this Iranian attack. And we just got a statement from a senior U.S. defense official saying that the U.S. will continue to shoot down Iranian-launched drones that have been targeting Israel. So a confirmation that the U.S. has indeed been taking down these Iranian drones. Meanwhile, a spokeswoman for the National Security Council, again, used this word we've heard over and over again coming from the Biden White House, ironclad, to describe the level of support that the U.S. has for Israel's security. And though we're not getting much more detail about what assets the U.S. is deploying to take down these drones and other incoming projectiles from Iran, we are getting some clues for a British official saying that British air jets are now replacing some of the U.S. fighters that have been doing counter-terrorism work in Iraq and Syria in order to free up those U.S. fighter jets to now support Israel. In total, there are still tens of thousands of U.S. troops who are deployed in this region, I should remind us. And there's another 1,000 U.S. troops that are en route to the coast of Gaza there to build a humanitarian pier to receive the delivery of food there. But the Pentagon has been moving to even beef up more the presence of U.S. troops in this region, not to mention the USS Eisenhower carrier group, which includes 2 destroyers as well as 9 Air Force squadrons that have all been placed there waiting in anticipation for this moment to arrive. Again, we're not exactly clear which assets were used to take down these Iranian drones, but that response continues as we speak.
Yeah, Heidi, let's just go back to President Biden, because there's some speculation that he knew about this attack. What sort of behind-the-scenes diplomatic warnings or intelligence led Biden to believe that the response would be sooner rather than later?
He certainly hinted at that. He said there was intelligence that he knew of but couldn't get into publicly yesterday when he said those words exactly, that this attack would be coming sooner rather than later. And he told Iran at that time, which was about 24 hours ago now, don't do it. Well, obviously, that advice was disregarded by Iran. But behind the scenes, the U.S. has been, over the last 10 days or so, really ramping up diplomatic pressure, trying to avoid this very moment from occurring, using pressure on third-party countries to try to pressure Iran to back down from its threat. But the fact that this is taking place came as a surprise to no one, given that the U.S. had intelligence that this would be occurring and the many clues and the telegraphing that Iran gave that this moment would arrive.
All right, so Heidi Castro, live for us there in Washington, D.C. Heidi, thank you. Well, there's been strong reaction from leaders abroad and the region. The EU's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, released the following statement on X. He said the EU strongly condemns the unacceptable Iranian attack against Israel. This is an unprecedented escalation and a grave threat to regional security. Well, the UK has been a firm supporter of Israel. The British Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has reacted by saying, "I condemn in the strongest terms the Iranian regime's attack against Israel. Iran has once again demonstrated that it's intent on sowing chaos in its own backyard." The UK will continue to stand up for Israel's security and for all our regional partners, including Jordan and Iraq. Alongside our allies, we're urgently working to stabilize the situation and prevent further escalation. No one wants to see more bloodshed. Well, Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, has issued a video statement on X.
In the context of what is going on in the Middle East, it's really important to follow me up and watch the videos that I start to describe the metaphysics of this. All right, that's reading the Zohar, that's reading the Rambam, that is, looking at this from a Kabbalistic point of view. I have done 6 videos so far. There will be about 16 videos about the Rambam, Maimonides. Maimonides is his name, Rambam is his nickname. Rambam and dealing with the red heifer and all the laws that are involved in sacrificing of the red heifer, raising the red heifer, the usage of the ash to create purity, and so it's really important to understand this kind of metaphysical part of this. All right, so please follow those episodes. All right, I've published 6 of them. There will be an additional maybe 10 more to go, and you'll get a better understanding of some of the legalistic aspects to the red heifer, what needs to transpire that leads to the purity for rebuilding the temple. Because like I said, this is not the normal UN nation state conflict. This is more biblical. All right, so please watch those videos.
He says the malicious Zionist regime will be punished. Attacking our consulate is like attacking our soil. The malicious regime has made a wrong move in this case. All right, let's bring in David Dorosh.
Let me get this straight. So they can put their general, in a compound next to their embassy, coordinate with Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis to attack Israel, disrupt shipping lanes, attack the United States, and they think that no one is going to go and try to hit them if they could get them. Obviously, Iran's leadership didn't watch Munich by Spielberg.
The National Defense University joins us live from Washington, D.C. David, always good to have you with us, particularly on a night like tonight. Give us first then your response to Iran's retaliation against Israel. And how surprised are you, David, that Iran used a direct attack rather than via its proxies?
Extremely response. Honestly, I'm amazed you guys are having fun because I got it exactly wrong. I didn't think they'd do this. I think what it shows is two things. The first thing is we say Iran, but we're really talking about the Revolutionary Guard, which increasingly
He just stated what I've been saying for multiple videos. The military experts, the policy wonks, government officials, they are gonna get this wrong because it is metaphysical. It is the battle between Esau and Jacob. And you're starting to see it all starting to unravel in how potentially over time that Israel's borders are going to grow. The West Bank will no longer be occupied by the Palestinians, nor Jerusalem. And the Dome of the Rock is coming down.
the country, and they are very embarrassed. My assessment is that this is not a move in the strategic interest of Iran unless they're able to effectively deter Israel, but it is directed at restoring the prestige and pride of the Revolutionary Guard, which clearly
These clowns don't get it. Once the red heifer is sacrificed, the countdown starts. It starts. And the theocracy in Iran knows this. And the weakest point last year for the Jewish people was actually Rosh Hashanah, when you can't blow the shofar, which happened to be, a unique point in time, and to attack them on Simchas Torah. They knew that was the Achilles heel for the Jewish people. Metaphysically, this is a war about metaphysics. These dumbasses will never understand this.
Penetrated by Israeli intelligence. I'm also a little concerned that if the Iranians have made a statement from their UN ambassador saying, "Okay, this is it, we're done." But if their target selection is viewed by Israel as overly provocative, or if they just manage to kill a large number of Israelis, Israel cannot leave this here. So, we're at a very dangerous moment. And, we're not sure what the Iranian intentions are, but the actions they've done in support of their intentions have the potential for leading to this ratcheting escalatory mechanism.
And if we, meaning the United States and Israel, killed Hamas and killed Hezbollah in 2016, we wouldn't have this problem, would we?
And David, just talk us through what more we know about the Shahed drones that are in the skies over Israel. Many have been shot down. Their range, their speed, their warheads, their payload, etc.
This is the important
part. The payload is, let's start with that. That's the interesting part. So the payload is about 50 kilograms, it's about the size of 2 coffee cans. I've got to handle a few of these. It has copper penetrating plates all around it. It has high explosives, and then it has bits of shrapnel really kind of glued to it in sort of almost an aftermarket looking thing. So it's not really an effective weapon against a hardened military target. It's more of a terror weapon. It's designed to, the copper plates shoot out penetrating jets. So if it hits some sort of machinery like an electric transformer, it will cause some serious damage. And of course, the shrapnel will create damage to vehicles and especially personnel, but it doesn't have the ability to penetrate. The propeller-driven Shahed is very slow moving. There is a jet version, and at least one channel is reporting that the jet version is being used. That moves faster, but the big challenge is actually tracking this, because most air defense is dependent on radar, and the body of this is fiberglass. It doesn't have much of a radar signature. Paradoxically, if they're using the jet version, you can track that because it has a thermal signature, the heat of the jet engine. It's actually easier for like an aircraft to identify and acquire the heat. And if they're on an inertial guidance, they're not being actively steered, which is subject to electric warfare. If they're just being put on a dead reckoning path, if you see them once, you can project where they're going and intercept them either with aircraft or with ground-based systems. But it's still significant, particularly if you've got, hundreds of them coming at you. You can overwhelm anybody with numbers.
Yeah, that's an important point you make, David, because is the Iranian strategy then to overwhelm Israel's multi-layered air defense system? I mean, and also by using other aerial assets like ballistic missiles, cruise missiles. So in effect, the attack itself is multi-layered as well.
Exactly. I think that, when you look at defense, you probably divide into one sector looking at low-level defenses, and that would be drones and cruise missiles, and then one looking at ballistic missiles. And obviously you have different systems for acquiring and intercepting them. With ballistic missiles, you can do that with radar pretty effectively. And systems like Arrow is designed for ballistic missile defense. For the other air breathers, things operating closer to the ground, you need to have different systems, and you can actually effectively interdict them with aircraft and other means. And of course, overlying all of this is electronic warfare. The accuracy is what makes these things really deadly. If they're going to be hyper accurate, that requires usually some sort of active guidance. And if you can jam the guidance system, which is usually GPS or the Russian version of GPS, probably in this case, then the missiles become inaccurate. Although that creates the possibility of Iran hitting a target that they may not want to hit and inadvertently causing civilian casualties that will necessitate an Israeli response. So it's a very, very dangerous game.
Yeah, let's just talk, if we can, David, about then the calibration of that response. Because if the attack is just using drones, the Iranians must have calculated that as they're slower, most will be shot down. So does this then lessen the response threat level, as opposed to if ballistic and cruise missiles are used, then there could be a higher response level from the Israelis. And of course, the damage assessment will show how the Israelis respond to all of this.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's easier to acquire cruise missiles than drones at a short distance. Given the long range these are attacking, I mean, why would you give an enemy that much time to acquire the target and possibly defeat it? So it seems to indicate that this is sort of a pro forma thing, just to say that we've done it, and hope that you don't cause enough damage that the cycle of escalation starts off. So that's there. But with cruise missiles, they move fast. They have more of a heat signature, they have more of a metal signature, but it's hard to acquire them with ground-based radar because of the curvature of the Earth and the low level they fly at. So that creates a greater potential. They also have bigger warheads. And of course, ballistic missiles, extremely expensive to defeat. The technology for defeating them is there, but if there are large numbers of them fired, particularly if they're fired at one point, then you can overwhelm defenses and cause some serious damage, and the warhead is capable of causing serious damage. So, when this is over, there'll be some analysis as to what was targeted and what was targeted with what weapons next. And that really, I think, is how Israel will determine what Iran's intentions are and what their response needs to be.
Yeah, David, and just remind our viewers then, if you can, talk us through Israel's air defense capabilities. And we hear so much about the Iron Dome system, but of course Israel has many more air defense systems and a multitude of electronic jamming measures as well, don't they?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think underlying it all, you'd have electronic warfare. And the purpose of electronic warfare is to defeat any kind of a guided system. Guided system requires some sort of electric link that goes from the aircraft, whether it's a drone or a missile in some instances, back to somebody that can maneuver it. So if you disrupt that, then the missile is useless as a targeted weapon, although it can still cause damage. You know, they still land in an apartment building or something that was unintended. The second thing is using GPS, these satellite-aided navigation. It's relatively easy to jam or to block or to even spoof because it's such a weak signal. So that's your second thing. Then you're dealing with weapons that may be just fired on an inertial system where they're fired at a bearing and a distance and they don't have any active guidance. So those are not susceptible to electronic warfare. But the longer those weapons have to travel, the less accurate they become, the greater the chances of them going off course. Then you look at your interception. For ballistic missiles, things like Arrow and Aegis in the U.S. system that intercept at a high level, they acquire the target via radar and hit it at a high level. For cruise missiles and for drones, that's a little bit harder because radar usually can't acquire them, both because they're made out of fiberglass and because they operate lower to the ground. If you have some sort of airborne asset, you can acquire it, particularly if they're on a straight path over a long distance, as these Shaheeds are reported to be. And with the slow-moving ones, they're usually vulnerable to attack by aircraft. It's like hitting a Cessna aircraft with a bullet from a fighter jet. And of course, you can have ground-based short-range air defense systems. The Iron Dome is designed for use against relatively low-tech rockets and artillery rounds coming less sophisticated things. They are effective against drones, and of course ground-based machine guns, if you have adequate targeting, are effective against drones as well. That's probably more than you want. I apologize for.
No, that's absolutely fine, David. Always good to get your thoughts and your analysis on a night like tonight, and we'll obviously come back to you later on to give us your military analysis of this developing story. David Orosh, there, professor at the National Defense University in Washington. David, thank you. Before we move on, though, let's just recap something. Hamda Salute, our correspondent in Tel Aviv, was saying that there was a young 10-year-old boy who was injured by one of those drones in somewhere near the Negev desert. We understand he's now become the first casualty. So we'll obviously come back to that just a little bit later. But let's just talk to you now about this is what the airspace over the region looks like right now. You can clearly see the area.
That's not going to bode well for Iran. Trust me on this. Now Netanyahu is going to have to do a retaliatory strike.
Planes are avoiding those big holes in the middle of your screen. We know that Jordan has closed its airspace, Iraq has, Israel has. So those big blank areas in the middle are the airspaces that have been closed down. So that's what you're seeing on this screen from Flight Radar 24. Well, as we were just saying there, Iraq is one of the countries that's closed its airspace for the next couple of days. Al Jazeera's Mohammed Jamjoom is there. He joins us from the capital, Baghdad. Mohammed, so Iraq announced its airspace is closed. What more is being said there by officials in Baghdad?
The only official statement we've gotten from any government entity thus far the last few hours, Darren, is from the Transport Ministry in alignment with the Civil Aviation Authority, announcing the closure of the airspace until around 5:30 a.m. But they say that can be extended depending on the security situation going forward. Now, one of the key questions that people in Iraq have had the past few days, as it looked more and more as though Iran was going to be launching this retaliatory attack on Israel, was would this involve any Iranian proxy groups, any Iranian paramilitary groups, armed groups that are linked with Iran or backed by Iran? Of course, you have the Islamic Resistance in Iraq. That is an umbrella group comprising of many of these Iran-aligned and Iran-backed groups. Just yesterday, they issued a statement, this umbrella group, essentially saying that if Israel or the U.S. were to attack Iran or any Iran-allied countries here in the region, that there would be repercussions and that there would be retaliatory strikes from within those groups inside Iraq. Now, thus far, in the last few hours, we have not heard any claims of responsibility from any of these groups including Kataib Hezbollah here in Iraq, part of that umbrella group, any of the other groups as well, as far as talking about having participated in Iran's strikes on Israel. We've seen one of those groups, which is Kataib Sayyid al-Shuhada, the head of that group, posted on social media expressing support for Iran's attack on Israel, but nothing beyond that. We've not yet heard anything from any Iraqi government officials with regard to these attacks or what they expect to happen in the days to come. And this is all happening at a very interesting time because the Iraqi Prime Minister, Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, left yesterday from Baghdad, heading to Washington, D.C., because he's supposed to meet with U.S. President Joe Biden on Monday to discuss not only bilateral relations between the two countries, but also trying to come up with a timeline to decrease U.S. troop presence in Iraq. Of course, there are around 2,500 U.S. troops in Iraq. There are about 900 U.S. military personnel in Syria. U.S. military assets in Iraq and Syria have many times over the course of the last several months and the last several years come under attack by these Iran-linked groups in Iraq. And in fact, after October 7th, around 170 attacks from these groups towards U.S. military personnel had been happening. That all ended in late January. That's when there was an attack by Kataib Hezbollah, and that killed 3 U.S. troops at a base in Jordan. After that, you had retaliatory strikes by the U.S. on some of these groups, killing some of their leaders. And since about early February, there's been an unofficial ceasefire because there were pressure put on these groups not try to widen this conflict. Unclear what's going to happen now going forward, but I will tell you that in the last half an hour, we are seeing reports emerging from northern Iraq in the Kurdish region that in fact the sirens in and around the U.S. consulate compound in Erbil, that they were activated for a short time. We're also seeing reports that there were loud booms heard in that area. And also there are reports that there was at least one of those Iranian drones headed towards Israel that was shot out of the sky, that was intercepted by coalition forces. So a lot to take in right now, a lot to try to piece together. We are reaching out to Iraqi government officials. We are reaching out to Kurdish officials. So far, nobody's responding as to what exactly is going on. It's a very tense situation, but at the moment, not a lot as far as what we're hearing from any officials here in Iraq, even though this is a moment of great tension and a lot of confusion about what will happen here in the days to come.
Yeah, Mohammed, as you say, the timing of...
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nanosilver liquid, either Health Max 14 or Health Max 35. You can also get silver solution, which is a 30 ppm. What this does is it'll neutralize pathogens. You swish it in your mouth, you gargle with it, and you swallow it. You take a teaspoon of it a day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or 2 a day. And get these applicators if you haven't already. And you can put this liquid in these different bottles. I have a spray bottle, a dropper, and a nasal spray. And you can take them to work or take them in, to wherever you go and put it in your bag. And it's much easier to carry than a big bottle like this. So get the applicators, also get the Health Max 35, Health Max 14, or the silver solution. This will help to neutralize pathogens and help to boost up your immune system.
Really significant because of the Iraqi Prime Minister's trip to Washington to meet President Biden and to meet officials there. You were talking to us earlier about the risk to U.S. troops and U.S. assets, and there have been attacks on them in Iraq for as long as we can remember. What is the risk now, given the Iranian retaliation against Israel?
Well, that's the big question right now, because people are concerned about what happens specifically when it comes to Iraq if these Iranian proxy groups, these paramilitary groups inside of Iraq get involved. And that has been one of the things that people have been worried about as it became that Iran was going to be launching their...
All right, so I get a notification from Bloomberg News, U.S. forces down some Iranian drones headed for Israel, while the UK says it deployed jets to intercept them.
Strikes, their attacks, their direct attacks on Israel would they be involving those groups that they have links to and that they back inside of Iraq. And we just don't know the answer to that question right now, because if they are involved, it might be expected that perhaps the U.S. would retaliate in some way, as they have in the past when U.S. troops have either been attacked directly by these groups or have been under threat by these groups. So right now, especially at a time when the Iraqi prime minister is scheduled to meet with President Biden on Monday, and all indications at this point in time is that that meeting will proceed, how is that going to impact the Iraq-U.S. relationship? Because we all know that, Iraq is for a long time now stuck between Iran and the U.S. The prime minister who came to power backed by Iranian groups in Iraq, that's what got him into that position. He is navigating a very delicate balance right now. He wants to see U.S. troop levels in Iraq significantly decreased. He wants to see a timetable for the full withdrawal of those U.S. troops. There has been rising anti-U.S. sentiment in Iraq the last several months when these retaliatory strikes by the U.S. against these Iran-backed groups in Iraq have been happening. So obviously the U.S. would not want to decrease its presence here if they feel that there are groups in Iraq that are now going to pose more of a threat to Israel. These groups have also attacked Israel since October 7th. So it's a very, very complicated situation. The timing arguably could not be worse for the Iraqi prime minister at a time when, as you mentioned, not only did they want to discuss trying to strengthen bilateral relations with the U.S., but trying to ensure that the U.S.'s mission in Iraq finally comes to an end. And all of this now, a very big question mark at a very crucial time.
All right, Mohammed Jamjoon, live for us there in the Iraqi capital. Mohammed, will be coming back to you later on throughout the night, but for now, thank you. Well, US President Joe Biden has just released a statement on X. He said, "I just met with my national security team for an update on Iran's attacks against Israel. Our commitment to Israel's security against threats from Iran and its proxies is ironclad." Let's go to Gabriel Zondo now at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Gabe, we'll come to President Biden's statement in a second, but the Iranian mission to the UN issued a statement earlier. Just remind us, Gabe, what they had to say.
Yeah, that's right. This is the only statement that we've gotten out of the Iranian mission, but it's an important one, and it is worth repeating in these very sensitive times, of course. The Iranian mission, permanent mission to the United Nations, put out this statement saying that they conducted on the strength of Article 51 of the UN Charter pertaining to legitimate defense. Iran's military action was in response to, in their words, the Zionist regime's aggression against our diplomatic presence in Damascus. The matter can be deemed concluded. The message on X went on to say, however, should the Israeli regime make another mistake, Iran's response will be considerably more severe. It is a conflict between Iran and the rogue Israeli regime from which the U.S. must stay away. So clearly two things out of that statement by the Iranian mission that are pretty important. Number one is they are saying, make no mistake, they are saying it's in accordance with Article 51 of this, the UN Charter. And in Article 51, it says, nothing in the present charter shall impair the inherent right of individual or collective self-defense if an armed attack occurs.
I said many, many videos ago, all right, about this conflict, that the ultra-liberal and the soul root of Esau is going to use the UN as cover for this war. But make no mistake, it's a battle between the soul roots and the UN, and trying to use some sort of international Westphalian logic. It's not going to work in this case because it's metaphysical. And this is playing out exactly how I said it was coming.
Against a member of the United Nations. So clearly, Iran positioning itself here that this is a response in line with international law, in line with.
We're Iran, and we're gonna fund Hezbollah and Hamas, and they're gonna attack Israel. yes, Israel has done bad things, but we're gonna attack Israel, all right? And then when Israel attacks us back, either our proxy fighters or our, our installations, then we're gonna go to the UN and ask for mercy. This is classic Esau, classic.
Charter, because it was a response to Israel's attack on Iran's diplomatic premises in Damascus, of course. But then also the other important part of this statement as well is the matter can be deemed concluded. Clearly, Iran there saying that this is it, this is the response. And as far as they're concerned, at least from this statement and where we're at right now, at this very hour, in their words, the issue is concluded. So those are pretty important statements there from the Iranian mission here at the UN.
Yeah, Gabe, but just a final thought to you. I mean, what about the response from other UN members, including the US? President Biden responded there. How worried are they about any further escalation?
Well, the U.S., of course, in Washington, they're, of course, very worried about it. You saw it there from the statement. President Joe Biden returning from Rehoboth Beach, where he spends a lot of his weekend time late on a Saturday to be back at the White House. You knew when that happened that they announced that he was coming back to the White House. That meant that something was probably going to be happening, clearly. Beyond that, here at UN headquarters in New York, it's a little before 8 p.m. local time here. I can tell you we have gotten no other reactions so far from any countries here, member states of the UN. I can tell you that Malta holds the presidency of the Security Council for the month of April. So if there were to be an emergency Security Council meeting called because of what's happening right now, it would be Malta that would have to plan that meeting and or schedule that meeting, if you will. And according to our diplomatic sources, Malta has not at this hour gotten any requests yet for an emergency Security Council meeting. Of course, that could change at any moment. I should also say the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, is in New York. We're hearing that he possibly, I stress the word possibly, could be issuing some sort of statement in the coming hours.
All right, so Gabriel Elizondo, live for us there at UN headquarters in New York. Gabe, thank you. Well, Akiva Eldar is a political analyst and contributor to the Israeli daily paper Haaretz. He says that Israel and the United States will have to respond to Iran's attacks.
For Israel, it is very clear that Netanyahu was thinking for many years about this kind of escalation. He was planning with Ehud Barak at that time, who was Minister of Defense, to strike Iran in a different context. The context was to stop the nuclear program. Now, he has even a greater interest to do this, because after he convinced former President Trump to pull out of the nuclear agreement, now Iran is few weeks, maybe months away from a nuclear bomb. So the other thing is that Iran has been hiding behind its proxies since October 7th, and even before that, behind Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, and was hitting Israel. And for Netanyahu, this is an opportunity to go inside, to go deeper into the source of the Israeli strategic issue it has with Iran. This is not the end of the game tonight. And in this case, I think Israel will have to hit back, and then the superpowers will have to take a stance and be clear about how do they stop the escalation. And the Israeli response has to do with not, I'm afraid, with Netanyahu's public relations. He has got now the support of the Israeli public, which he lost in October 7th. Nobody is talking now about the abductees. Nobody is talking about the famine in Gaza. It's all about Iran. It depends on how far the United States is willing to go, what is the American leverage on Iran, and how will the members of the Abraham Accord, who has a clear interest to stop Iran from getting the hegemony over the Middle East, and how the Saudis will react.
Well, it's just gone past midnight, that's GMT. We're bringing you continuing coverage of Iran launching its retaliatory attack against Israel. The first wave of missiles launched by the Revolutionary Guards have reached Israeli cities. Well, air raid sirens have sounded in more than 720 locations, and rockets have been intercepted above Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. There are reports a 10-year-old boy has been killed in southern Israel. Tehran says the strikes are in response to Israel's bombing of the Iranian consulate in Syria. Well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's meeting with his war cabinet in Tel Aviv. Israeli combat planes are also in the skies. Israeli officials say the response will be firm and clear, and have called Iran's attack a severe and dangerous escalation. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden cut a weekend trip short and rushed back to Washington. He's met with his national security team and says US commitment to Israel's security is, quote, ironclad. Iran is warning that any threat from the US that harms Iran's interests would be met with a reciprocal response. Well, Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon, and Israel have all temporarily closed their airspace. It comes after earlier reports of interference with the GPS navigation systems. Well, Al Jazeera's Dorsa Jabari joins us live now from the Iranian capital, Tehran. Dorsa, so we've had this statement then on X by the Iranians saying this is their only response and consider the matter concluded, and that they don't want a further escalation, a further widening of the conflict. What should we make of that response, Dorsa?
Well, I think it's a bit premature. Based on what we're seeing on local media, this attack is not over yet. It's continuing. The first wave of the attack is over. We're expecting another series of drones and missiles to be launched, if they haven't been so already, from what we're hearing based on local news outlets in the country. Now, we had another statement from Iran's Revolutionary Guard, and they said that after 10 days of silence by the international community, especially the United Nations Security Council failure to condemn the Israeli aggression, the IRGC has responded and decided to punish the aggressor, being Israel, and that they're hitting military targets, and that they warn the US government that any support or to get involved will be faced by decisive response. We also heard from the Foreign Ministry. They've also issued a statement here saying that the armed forces of Iran, under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, the right to self-defense and the legitimate right to respond to the aggression by the Zionist regime is what is being carried out.
But they're the ones that financed Hezbollah and Hamas.
Target to their diplomatic mission on April 1st is what it has led to this point. Now, I also want to point out that we just heard on state news agencies that one of the locations that was hit by a number of missiles, by medium-range ballistic missiles from Iran, has been reportedly the Ramon Air Base in the Negev Desert in Israel, and the Iranians are saying that they've launched multiple Khaybar missiles, which has a range of about 2,000 kilometers, and the target was this military airbase, which they've hit in the Negev Desert.
All right, Dorsa, just stay with us because the Israeli army spokesman.
Are there 10-year-olds running around on the base everywhere? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotic that I offer. I have this in a powder, and I also have a tablet form. I take the powder, I mix it with food. You can also mix it with water. Take it every day to get the proper gut biome. This is a great probiotic. It helps to get that better communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain. And you'll have more consistent stools. Because when you're dealing with World War III in the Middle East, you're going to be constipated, especially, watching the response by our military brass. Please go to my store and get the structural nanosilver soaps that I offer. I have it in oatmeal, spice, charcoal tea tree, peppermint. I also have it in lavender and lemongrass. So please go to my store and get the 5 different versions of the structural nanosilver soap. It neutralizes pathogens. It's a very high quality soap. You'll enjoy it. Get a few bars for your home.
Barry speaking now, West Jerusalem. Let's just listen.
Things in areas of risk. We are ready for such developments and we are working according to our operational plans. Continue to observe the instructions and maintain your coolness as you did over the past few hours. The military has done and continues to do everything to prevent Israel and its citizens. I will keep you updated. Any questions? We have heard a number of sirens in Dimona. Has Dimona or has a strategic target been threatened? This is a result of a small number of missiles that have been intercepted, and the military base in the south was sustained some damages in its infrastructure, very minor damages. Question: Iran says that this is their response, and should we consider this that the response is over? Answer: the military will continue to do what is needed. The event is not yet over. Do we expect any further threats? Answer: as I have said, threats still exist, and our aeroplanes continue to drop the drones outside our airspace. Our readiness is high. We continue to face such threats. Does Israel intend to attack Iranian nuclear facilities? The answer is that Israel's military will continue to do whatever is needed to defend the people of Israel. Has the military decided not to launch any attack against Iran based on agreement with the United Kingdom and the United States? I will not talk about this, but the military will continue to do whatever is needed to protect our people. Is it true that, as Iran stated, that the event is behind us? Answer: as I have said, the event is not yet behind us, and the military will do whatever necessary to defend our people. Now I will speak in English.
שאילתת מערכת קול ברמה. אם אכן האיראנים מתייחסים למה שהיה כסוף פסוק ותגובה, האם גם מבחינת ישראל האירוע מאחורינו?
Drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles towards the state of Israel. Together with our allies and partners across the region, we are operating at this very moment to defend Israel from Iran's attack. So far, we've intercepted a vast majority of incoming missiles by Israeli systems. So far, we have intercepted and are continuing to intercept dozens of attack drones as well as cruise missiles and ballistic missiles outside of Israel's border. A number of Iranian missiles fell inside Israeli territory, causing minor damage to a military base with no casualties. Only one little girl has been hurt, and we hope she will be well. The Iranian attack is ongoing. Our plans are in the air. Tonight, wide-scale attack by Iran is a major escalation. Together with our allies and partners, we are operating at full force to defend the state of Israel and the people of Israel. We will continue to fulfill this mission Questions, please.
CNN is asking, what type and how many projectiles have been fired towards Israel tonight so far? And how many drones and missiles have been intercepted? Can you specify by region?
The event is still occurring, but until now, over 200 different kinds have been fired to Israel. Killer drones, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles. We have already intercepted a vast majority of the threats by Israeli systems and with assistance from our partners. We are still in the event, our planes are still in the air, intercepting targets, and we are ready for any threat that will come to Israel. We will do everything we need, everything to defend the state of Israel. Thank you very much.
All right, so you're watching there a live press conference there from Daniel Hagari, the Israeli military spokesman, talking there. He was saying that Israel was ready for this attack. He said the public must remain cool and calm and not panic. He was asked about what was happening in Dimona, which is an area where Israel, we believe, has a nuclear facility. So there was some minor damage caused from a drone there, but nothing major. He says the Israeli response isn't over yet, even though Iran says that's the end of their response. He was saying they still have planes in the skies and their response will continue because the Iranian threat still exists. He said they've intercepted most of the drones and missiles that have entered Israeli airspace. So that's Daniel Hagari, the Israeli military spokesman. Let's bring in Rory Challens. He joins us live from occupied East Jerusalem. Rory, so the Israeli military, of course, trying to reassure the public that all is well.
Well, they're saying it's not over yet, are they? They were saying that they are still up in the air and shooting down drone targets outside of Israeli airspace. So although the Iranians are saying we have made our points and that is the thing.
CNN is making you stupid. MSNBC is making you stupid. Al Jazeera wants to spin it in such a way where the soul root of Esau is going to prevail. You need to fight this by taking Clarity Factor. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It will remove the brain fog that our government is trying to put on you through processed foods and GMOs and stuff in the air. Take this product. It'll remove the brain fog. It'll help with your mental acuity. I take it twice a day. Some people only take it once a day, but it will improve those dendrites. It'll improve the neurons firing. So those dendritic connections will be maintained and improved. That way, the brain fog goes away and you have better mental acuity. So please go to my store and get the Clarity Factor. Take this product. It's a very high quality product. A lot better than what Alex Jones sells. Please go to my store and get the vitamin D3. This is a cofactor for gene expression. It also helps to absorb calcium and it helps to get rid of cells that need to go through apoptosis. All right, so I take 2 soft gels a day. I take one in the morning and one in the evening. There are 5,000 units for each soft gel. So go to the store and get the vitamin D3. Lastly, you need vitamin C. It's an antioxidant. It helps to improve the skin, and it also helps to improve your immune system. So please take this vitamin C from my store. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose of it. Drink it with filtered water. Back to the news. This is PNN.
Included. I think from the Israeli standpoint, it's not an all clear yet, certainly. So that is why Daniel Hagari was telling people that they should carry on listening to the instructions. If they're told to go to shelters, they should go to shelters, and basically sort of maintain that kind of home front command list of what they should and shouldn't be doing. So, we know that the airport, the Ben Gurion airport is going to be closed indefinitely. We know that schools, universities, daycare, etc., that's going to be shut for the next couple of days, and nobody is allowed to gather in numbers greater than 1,000 people. But I think generally, the Israeli military and its friends and partners can conclude that this was a pretty successful defense of the country, as long as there is no further waves that significantly degrade the air defense's capabilities to deal with the situation. They say that there were more than 200 various types of cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and drones launched. The vast majority of them, according to the Israelis, were intercepted. Only a few got through and caused some damage at a military base in the south of the country. And Daniel Hagari said that as far as they're aware at the moment, there is only one casualty, a small girl, but they say they hope to get better soon.
All right, Rory Challen's there live for us in Jerusalem. Rory, for the time being, thank you. Let's bring in Oren Ziv. He's a journalist and commentator at the Israeli magazine 972. Oren, good to have you with you. I believe that you're in Tel Aviv, but we understand you've seen some of the interceptions of these drones. Tell us what you've been seeing and hearing there where you are.
So it's the middle of the night here in Tel Aviv. We've seen some flares and airplanes on the sky. It's hard to say if it's Israeli flares or other things. There is not have been any hits in Tel Aviv or in the area. Earlier today, there was an anti-government demonstration and also for the release of the hostages. During the demonstrations, the organizer got the orders from the army, from the police, and they asked the people to leave. And since then, since around 10 in the evening, we've seen the streets getting empty, people leaving to their homes, not only the demonstration, but also other crowded area. I've seen people buying a bit of food, some mineral water, and basically the streets are empty, and many people chose to spend the night in shelters in their houses.
And Oren, what more can you tell us then about the Israeli government and the military response to this attack?
We've seen a lot of activity in the sky, but at the moment, because it's the middle of the night, we're getting the report about a Bedouin boy or girl that was injured in the south in a Bedouin community. We're hearing about other minor hits, but till now, from what I heard, we haven't seen any major hits or major locations that were damaged, specifically not in Tel Aviv and Jaffa, that are very quiet and empty at the moment.
Oren, just a final thought to you. I want to just pivot quickly to the war on Gaza. We understand your magazine got somehow some detailed information about how the Israeli military is using artificial intelligence to acquire targets in Gaza. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, definitely. Our story from last week by Yuval Abraham was talking about how the Israeli military, the Israeli intelligence unit, use AI in order to locate and assassinate Palestinians inside Gaza. And not only that, the research also showed how much collateral damage, so-called collateral damage, is approved by the senior military officers to kill even very low-rank Palestinians that are believed that are part of Hamas. So in general, I could say this showed that a lot of the attacks in Gaza that caused major casualties of civilians were almost, the vast majority of the process was done by softwares and AI, and just at the end, really shortly approved by human beings.
All right, Oren Ziv, reporting there from Tel Aviv. Oren is a journalist from 972 magazine. Oren, thank you very much indeed. Well, as we mentioned, US President Joe Biden has cut a weekend trip short and has returned to Washington, D.C. A short time ago, the White House posted his response on X saying, "I just met with my national security team for an update on Iran's attacks against Israel. Our commitment to Israel's security against threats from Iran and its proxies is ironclad." Let's bring in our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett. Kimberly, so Biden had that security meeting at the White House earlier, as we've already stated. Who was in that meeting, Kimberly, and what kind of response apart from this statement can we expect from Washington? I mean, US officials knew this was coming, didn't they?
Yes, that
We're going through in the spring a lot of antigens that are floating around, pollen. There's going to be what is called a type 1 hypersensitivity reaction. All right. So there's going to be allergies that people get. To help to mitigate those allergies, go to my store and boost up your immune system by following what to take. I've been saying this on almost every show. But in addition, make sure that you get the lozenges and the drops. It'll help to soothe your throat and it will neutralize pathogens. And in addition, it's going to help to boost up that immune system and get that barrier that you have that with the epithelial lining to be stronger and not irritated. So when you do that, you're reducing the chances of these type 1 hypersensitivity reactions, or what layman's would say just allergies. All right, so please go to my store and get the drops and the lozenges. I have elderberry and zinc in a 21 count. This is a lozenges. And I also have it in Manuka honey in a 21 count. Also get smaller ones, which are called drops, in blueberry in a 100 count and honey and lemon in a 100 count. These are extremely tasty, very high quality drops and lozenges. So, and they'll help you get through the allergy season. Follow my lead on this because, you know, like for example, if you've noticed in the United States, there's a lot more dust in the last several months in your house, right? Most likely. All right. I don't know why. I have some theories on it, but a lot of people are mentioning that there's more dust around them, right? Compared to a year ago. Maybe stuff's in the air that they're pumping, and, you know, or maybe it's, you know, what we saw with the fires that came from Canada that's causing some of this issue. Who knows? But there's more dust, right? And there's lots of theories on why that is. But this dust is going to irritate your throat. So what's important is to get these lozenges and get the liquid structural nanosilver and gargle with it and swallow it, and you're going to have a better barrier so you don't get sick. Get the lozenges and the drops. Get a few bags for your house. You're gonna be glad that you did. They taste great and they work very well. Go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
The case has been reported for a number of days that, in fact, there was an anticipated and imminent threat from Iran, some sort of retaliatory strike. The size, scope, and scale of the attack was something that was not being revealed by the National Security Council spokesperson, John Kirby. But having said that, there was something that was anticipated, and as a result, the force posture, as it's known, in other words, the military assets of the U.S. military were being adjusted. That we did know. We also know that the U.S. president, as recently as just the last couple of days, repeatedly iterated to Iran that he was cautioning it not to retaliate. When we say retaliate, what we mean is that in response to the attack that took place on April 1st, when the embassy in Damascus was struck, or rather the consulate. So as a result, U.S. President Joe Biden said, and really just gave a one-word warning. He said, don't. But as we know, that response is now underway. Now, as to who was present for the national security meeting that was taking place, and we should tell you has just wrapped up in the White House, just behind me in the Situation Room, as it's known.
All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop to Sky News here.
So really hardly surprising.
How involved in case of an escalation, which of course most European capitals or capitals in the region as well hope will not happen, but
In the case of an escalation, how involved would you predict that, for example, the British military would be?
Well, I think obviously the United States will be doing all they can. They're the most powerful players clearly in all of this. So we're doing all they can to try and get Israel to limit any reaction that it might decide to take. And of course, Israel's response to this will be dictated to a large extent by how damaging the attack is, whether any of the drones and potentially cruise missiles are being fired either from Iran and indeed from other Iranian proxies, perhaps in coordination with this strike from Iran, if it happens. I think, the damage it's done, will dictate the Israeli response, and probably almost, if let us assume that no missiles get through, which is a possibility, no drones get through, then Israel might still feel obliged to carry out an attack, because you can't have a foreign country really firing missiles at you or drones at you and do nothing about it. So I think there is the potential for escalation. And in some respects, it sounds counterintuitive, but I would say the harder that Israel hits Iran in response, let's say Israel attacks Iranian military targets, air bases or whatever, in retaliation to this, the harder it does it, the more likely it is that there will not be further escalation. If there's maybe a minor Israeli response, then that might embolden Iran further to do the same thing. It's a very complex situation, of course, here. And the key thing is to try and avoid it escalating into all-out regional war.
I mean, you're speaking to us from Jerusalem, so you know the area well. Do you get the sense that there is even a will to step back from any kind of escalation? Because you mentioned that Israel has to respond to the Iranian attack, obviously, but of course Iran would say that they had to respond to the attack on their consulate in Damascus. I mean, ultimately here you stop an escalation if there's a will to do so. Do you think there is a will to stop an escalation?
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying, but I think we shouldn't forget that the reason for Israel didn't just carry out a gratuitous attack against Iranian military commanders in Damascus. Ever since the 7th of October, Lebanese Hezbollah have been firing missiles almost every single day into Israel since the Gaza began. And those attacks were planned and supplied and coordinated by these generals that Israel attacked. So that wasn't the start of it.
And Barbara also spoke to our military analyst, Sean Bell, who explained what Israel's air defense systems is facing.
One of the things to remember about the drone.
Before we go to him, go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support my work. It's a lot better than CNN. It's a little funny. And it gives you a lot better perspective about what's going on in the Middle East in this metaphysical construct that we're navigating through as a society between the battling of the two soul roots of Jacob and Esau. Also, I've been reading Maimonides about the red heifer, and doing these chapter videos, which there will be 16 different videos about the laws of the red heifer. These things that are happening are tied to a much bigger metaphysical event. And I don't think anyone else is covering it like I am. So please go to my store and help support my work. You can do that by purchasing the very high quality supplements that I have, like turmeric. This will bring down inflammation and help slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system. So take turmeric every day. Resveratrol gets rid of senescent cells. It's also an antioxidant, very important as an anti-aging protocol. Help boost up your immune system by taking lignans. Take it every day. It's in a powder. Mix it with water or mix it with your food. It'll help to boost up your immune system. Males and females can take that. It'll help to balance the hormonal levels. Ashwagandha root will help to control your blood glucose levels. Really important, because if you have too much glucose in your blood, it's going to be inflammatory. And because CNN keeps on spouting BS that the CIA and the FBI want to have you hear on a continuous basis, probably because of MK Ultra or whatever, and you can't sleep at night, go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the good night formula. Why? Because it'll allow you to get the 2 or 3 cycles of REM sleep that you need so you can get consolidation of memory, and you are going to be able to filter out those toxins out of your body. It has been found that if you don't get regular sleep, especially REM cycle sleep, that toxins build up in the central nervous system through the CSF, and that's the central spinal fluid. And those toxins will build up, and over decades, if you are having problems sleeping, it will probably accelerate dementia. So please go to my store and get the good night formula. If you're having problems sleeping, you need the 2 to 3 cycles of REM sleep daily so you can have good, proper health. So go to my store. It has tryptophan and melatonin in it. Go to my store and take the good night formula. Back to the news. This is PNN.
Whilst they are a bit more of a terror weapon, most of them are relatively easy to shoot down. The Shahed 136, which the Iranian drones they've been providing to Russia, they only fly around about 140 miles an hour, and they are not that difficult to shoot down. The value of them, though, is that they create a sort of a volume, a quantity of weapons flying through the air, and therefore that provides cover for the cruise missiles, ballistic missiles that are also incoming. Now, the air defences that Israel has and that the US helped provide should mitigate some of that, but inevitably these ballistic missiles are particularly difficult to get through. And I think, as some of the correspondents have been talking about, some of the key here will be just how much damage has been done. Iran, there's a lot of questions here. Iran's been put on the horns of a dilemma because after Israel attacked that consulate building on the 1st of April, killing 13 people, including a senior military commander, Iran was almost duty-bound to do some sort of reaction. Israel would have known that. The fact is, waited some time for doing it, and as generally experience shows, it's quite measured. It will be interesting to see what they've targeted, how many telephone warnings coming in. We're already hearing some of that there's been some coordination between America and Iran. And if there has been coordination, Iran will be trying to make a point, but we'd be very clearly not wanting to escalate. And I think one of the things that most military analysts see here is that Iran has got a fledgling nuclear program. It will not want to have that program attacked. It will not want to provide an excuse to the Israelis or the Americans for attacking those programs, because ultimately, it's not if, it's when Iran gets nuclear weapons, they would be the ultimate deterrent against both Israel and the US. So I think there's clearly a lot going on behind the scenes.
So let the US try to de-escalate the situation in the Middle East for Iran to end up getting a nuclear weapon, and then they have unconventional means to let the whole world on fire. Well, when Iran does that, you're going to need very strong deodorant, because you're talking about millions of degrees Fahrenheit that happens with a nuclear weapon. So I have these very strong deodorants that are made from essential oils from the Himalayas. All right. So you're going to need to prep, for a nuclear war with really strong deodorants. So please go to my store and get either the citrus deodorant or the peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, so you smell perfect during a nuclear war. All right. In addition, can you please make sure that you get a few bars of this for your household, because you never know when you need to prep for deodorant, during a nuclear war. In addition, when you're going in a nuclear war, you're going to want to have fresh breath, white teeth, and no gingivitis. So please go to my store and get the structural nanosilver toothpaste. Why? Because it has no fluoride in it, and it neutralizes pathogens. It reduces irritation of the gum. It reduces it'll neutralize pathogens in the gingivitis. But in addition, it's going to help reduce the chances of cardiovascular disease. How? Because if you get plaque into your bloodstream, it could cause an occlusion. If you get bacteria in your bloodstream, it can cause problems with valvular disease. So it's really important to have good oral hygiene to help with cardiovascular health and valvular health. So go to my store, get the best toothpaste that you're going to be able to buy, get a few tubes of this for your household, and you'll be ready for nuclear war. I've been going at this for a few hours now. So thank you for listening. Please make sure you subscribe to all my channels. I have 3 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. And also, please help support my work by donating on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, or being a paid member on my Patreon channel. It helps to support my news coverage. I appreciate your viewership and your support. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.